This is Lesson 822, the story of limited monarchy, also called constitutional monarchy, same thing, and also called constitutionalism. Three names, same thing. England before Queen Elizabeth I. During the Middle Ages, English nobles revolted against a cruel king who overtaxed them. In the year 1215, nobles forced King John to sign the Magna Carta, which was the first step in limiting the king's power and protecting nobles' rights. The Magna Carta created what we think of as a limited monarchy. In other words, the monarch was now limited by certain laws, and it led to the formation of Parliament later in the year 1295. And this is Parliament. Parliament was a representative body of commoners and lords who worked with the king to pass laws and raise taxes. And you see on the left, you see a House of Commons, and on the right, you see a second house, a House of Lords. So it's a bicameral legislative body. And here's a modern-day picture of both houses of Parliament. Elizabeth's father, Henry VIII, along with Parliament, transformed England during the Protestant Reformation, as we know, by creating the Church of England, otherwise known as the Anglican Church, and he was the supreme leader of that church. Like Calvinism, the Anglican Church was a Protestant church, so it did not follow the Catholic Pope. However, unlike Calvinism, the Anglican Church still kept many traditions and rituals that closely resembled those of the Catholic Church. After Henry's death, his son Edward became king, but he died at the age of 15. Elizabeth's sister Mary became queen, and she tried to convert all of England all the way back to Catholicism. Many Protestants who ignored Bloody Mary, as she was called, were executed or deported. After Mary's death in 1558, King Henry VIII's second daughter, Elizabeth, became queen, and Elizabeth ruled for 45 years and became the greatest monarch in English history. Elizabeth refused to share power with a man, and she never married, and she was known as the Virgin Queen. During her reign, Elizabeth I worked with Parliament to settle important issues, and one of the most important issues was to determine what religion England would be: Anglican, that is to say, Protestant, or Catholic. And the stability of Elizabeth's throne and the entire nation depended on how well she could keep both sides of this issue satisfied. So it's kind of like a roller coaster. Henry VIII and his son Edward VI and his daughter Mary had taken England on a kind of religious roller coaster ride. Henry VIII made himself head of the church in England, and he introduced the Bible in English, but he did not change church services very much. But his son Edward VI was strongly Protestant, and he introduced a new prayer book and had church services made in English, and he allowed priests to marry, and he destroyed certain church decorations because they were too gaudy. Mary, Henry's daughter by Catherine of Aragon, however, was strongly Catholic. The Pope was made the head of the church again, church services were changed back to Latin, priests were no longer allowed to marry, and Protestants were persecuted. So Elizabeth I wanted to get England off of that roller coaster by striking a balance between Anglican and Catholic. Elizabeth and Parliament passed the Act of Uniformity, and this act made Anglicanism, the Anglican Church, the official religion of England. But many Catholic traditions and rituals remained, and this compromise kind of settled the religious issue in England, at least for the time being. Elizabeth's rival was Mary Stuart, Queen of Scotland, and we often know her as Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary Stuart, Mary, Queen of Scots, was one of these problems that were left over. The Act of Uniformity didn't make all Catholics happy. Many Catholics wanted Elizabeth's cousin, Mary Stuart, to be the queen. Mary was already the Queen of Scotland, and she was a staunch Catholic. In Scotland, Mary, Queen of Scots, was overthrown by the Presbyterians, also known as Calvinists. and Mary Stuart was implicated in an attempt to overthrow and execute Elizabeth I. What did Elizabeth do? She decided that Mary, Queen of Scots, was simply too dangerous to keep alive. And as you can see, Elizabeth ordered Mary beheaded. Mary got her revenge, though. Her son James became the next king of England. So here's Elizabeth, here's Mary, and here's Mary's son James, who was going to become James I. Keep in mind, Elizabeth, she never married. She didn't have any children to pass the throne to. Elizabeth promoted capitalism and mercantilism by encouraging joint stock companies to invest in overseas exploration and colonization. During Elizabeth's reign as queen, England experienced a golden age in culture, especially in literature and theater, including Shakespeare. After Elizabeth's death in 1603, the Stuart family assumed the monarchy. Unlike Elizabeth, the Stuart Kings refused to work with Parliament and tried to create an absolute monarchy in England. Also, every single one of them was suspected, for good reasons, of having dangerous Catholic sympathies, even being secret Catholics in disguise. The generations-long series of conflicts between Parliament and the four Stuart Kings led to a violent civil war in 1642 called the English Civil War, and another near-civil war in 1688 called the Glorious Revolution. In the Glorious Revolution, King James II, the fourth Stuart king, was finally replaced by his Protestant daughter Mary and her husband William, and they became William and Mary. But they had to agree to the English Bill of Rights before they could take the throne. After the Glorious Revolution, Parliament required new monarchs to sign on to a Bill of Rights. And this English Bill of Rights protected citizens from their government. For example, the king cannot tax or overturn Parliament's laws. It protected freedom of speech. The army cannot be used as a police force. There would be no excessive bail. Together, the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights created a constitutional monarchy in England by serving as written limits on the king's power. The English Bill of Rights influenced the American Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution and constitutions around the world. But we should also remember that the English Bill of Rights was very anti-Catholic. Protestants could bear arms, but Catholics could not. Catholics were the only religion they could not practice freely. All other Protestant religions could practice freely. And no Catholic could sit on the English throne as king.